You probably can't read that. Probably can't. It says Crobot on it. Something Supernatural. This is a debut album from a band from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, which I feel as though I should know where that is, considering I live in this damn state, but I honestly don't. And maybe somebody can illuminate to me which side of the state it's on. Somebody can wiki this, because I was going to do that, and then I started listening to that album. And I got really engrossed in it. I got really kind of, very much lost in this 11-track affair, and there's many reasons as to why that is, and I'm going to talk about a couple of those kind of as this review sort of continues. And I'm just sort of staring at this and not really paying that much attention to you, because there's a lot of things that this album, even just by its cover alone, remind me of. There are bands that this reminds me of, and really that was the appeal. It wasn't just the fact that this album was on sale at my store for $7.99 that made me want to buy this. It was because if you look at this, if you look at the style in which that logo for Crobot, the way in which that is, it makes you think of some things. It makes me think of bands such as the Grateful Dead, or either that or bands from the late 60s, early 70s from the psychedelic movement, or it makes me think of bands such as Clutch or The Sword. Bands that are able to incorporate a bit of a stoner gimmick or a stoner idea into rock music or heavy metal music or what have you. So immediately whenever you see something like this, you have an expectation. And knowing that these guys were a rock band, considering I did do some minor research, I figured why not? Let's give it a try. So, what is so supernatural about Something Supernatural by Crobot? I'll tell you what's supernatural about this. It's the fact that it really seems to have dialed up the ghost of, well, a lot of different bands. And some of the bands that I listed are actually very accurate in that regard, but others that I'm definitely thinking about, in fact, most of these are all still around, are Soundgarden. There's definitely some Soundgarden reference in there. There's definitely some Clutch reference. There's The Sword. I think about Slash with Miles Kennedy whenever it comes to the vocals that this group is able to possess. It's really quite intriguing, the whole entire idea. And I also think a little bit of Corrosion of Conformity whenever it comes to the whole riff practice, except as opposed to it being a more metal idea like COC or even Down, this is instead a band that does so with more of a rock sensibility. So perhaps other people will conjure up ideas of bands such as Airborne or Wolfmother. Wolfmother's a great one. You can definitely hear some semblances in there of tracks such as Woman from Wolfmother. So this is a very dirty, dusty, grimy style of rock and roll music. There's a lot of fuzz into this. This is definitely something that has the alternative world perhaps in a little bit of a buzz, and if it hasn't happened yet, it certainly will. Principally because of the way in which these guys construct their tracks. There's a very, very fine line between being able to construct tracks that remind you of the 1990s here in 2014, or at least of this style of music in 2014, and actually being able to accomplish it. There are some bands that try to accomplish it, and it kind of falls off a little bit flat. Either that, or they accomplish it for one track and then really establish their own identity for the rest of it, and it's all just kind of a tease. Bands such as Crobot and Royal Blood is another great example, are two bands that are really able to give me that feeling, that alternative rock and roll radio feeling, that really showcased the diversity of the decade of the 1990s. What I love about this band is the fact that they are able just to rock out on each and every one of these tracks. They can slow things down, or they can just rock out, but for the majority of this, they are going to be rocking out. They're going to be using a lot of great harmony to this, and really the vocals are one of the most remarkable aspects of this affair, and it's the fact that this is a gentleman, this is an up-and-coming singer that certainly is going to be taking a lot of people by surprise. They're going to be taking notice to what he's able to do, because he is going to remind them of vocalists such as Chris Cornell, or even to a lesser degree of Miles Kennedy. It's going to be a lesser degree to Miles Kennedy, considering it's not a pure vocal prowess. It's instead one that is very, very tailored and centered toward the music that swirls around him. This feels a little bit like a concept record in a way. It feels like it's very much taking the idea of a cosmic journey in which we are transported into another realm, into another universe, perhaps to a parallel timeline altogether, where we're encountering sort of the different ideas, the different the different mythos of a new land. For example, whenever you think about tracks such as The Legend of the Spaceborne Killer, and then going into ideas such as The Necromancer and The Skull of Geronimo, and Night of the Sacrifice, Chupacabra, Wizards, and Queen of the Light, and I'm using this as reference because, let's face it, this is the best reference point to use, the actual disc itself. Man, it's really fucking cool. You really kind of feel, and then whenever you get into the lyrical content, you really feel like you've been transported to another place, and each and every track is kind of a new chapter into a new strange visual realm, and it's very cool. And it's very, very neat. I like the way that the dusty guitars kind of merge together with the very thick and bombastic drum beats that accompany this. The bass is thick. Everything just feels like it's running on all cylinders. And this is a band also that's not afraid to drop a solo or two here or there, and these are solos that are more impressive than some bands that are very mainstream whenever you consider it. This really does have an old style philosophy to it, and we don't have a gentleman on this album that is kind of, you know, the Slash of the group. This is not something from the 1980s where you need to have a big-time guitar player that is able to shred for hours on end and really have a ridiculous image in order to really establish yourself as a premier band. This is instead something that's very much built from the ground up, has a very garage-esque feel to it because of how fuzzed out this is, but it also is able to maintain a very space rock feel to it with some of the other aural cues that you hear throughout the course of this album, almost as though whenever you hear some of the strange sampling and programming in here, it's almost as though you're being transported out of one area of this new realm to another. There are some allusions to Rage Against the Machine on here. No, you're not going to hear Tom Morello scratching, but you're definitely going to hear some great progressions that will remind you a little bit about Zach De La Rocha's former group. Man, I wish he was back in them, and I wish they were releasing new material. That would just be great. But hey, the Night Watchman and Tom Morello is, hey, it's fantastic as it is. But yes, this is a group that's able to embody a lot of the things that many of us kind of grew up to love if you were an alternative music fan. And even if you're a metalhead, these are all things that you probably grew up to love as well, considering the time frame, considering the time window. And whenever you consider bands such as Clutch or The Sword or any of the other, you know, kind of metal/rock groups, the kind of split groups that I have mentioned, then this is something that's right and directly up your alley. This is something that needs to be within your realm of music. You need to be transported into this realm and include it in your musical realm. This is quite honestly one of the biggest surprises of the year for me, and it's one that I actually purchased and decided to review on a complete and total whim. This was not on my scheduled list of events. This was instead something that decided to come in and make its presence felt and sort of crash the party a little bit. It made me take notice and made me realize that I had to talk with you guys about this band. And so here we are. And I'm going to tell you right now, this newcomer, this new band from Pottsville, PA, is right now seriously a contender for the album of the year for the non-metal category. And I think they're actually going to be one of those crossover bands that may be on both lists. Because I feel this will have an appeal to both non-metal and metal fans alike. I feel that it has just enough of that rough exterior where metalheads may actually be willing to include it in their collections, considering it just rocks and has a good time and might be something cool to get blazed to. For non-metal fans, though, this is essential listening. You gotta check these guys out. The album right now is very cheap at any FYE, $7.99, perhaps for the next couple of days. If you're viewing this from the future, it may be a little bit more expensive, but worth every penny. Take a risk with these guys. If you have already, let me know in the comments below what you think about them. Let me know what you think about Crobot. Sample some stuff, come back, talk to me. Let me talk to you. These guys are great. Check them out.